Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Yeah. How was last night? Pretty crazy? Yeah. All right. Yeah, I've been here for 3 days and I need to leave soon. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This is going to be a really, really fun panel. My name is Darshan Shah. I'm the CEO and the founder of a company called Next Health, which is the clinical practice of what we now call it longevity medicine. Now, longevity medicine was not even a term 10 years ago when I started this practice. And we opened our first clinic in Los Angeles in West Hollywood. It's 1,000 square feet. And I opened it because I went through my own health struggles as a physician myself. So, I've been a physician for 30 years, and I spent 20 of those years in the operating room doing surgery. And during that time, I was stressed out, working my butt off, 7 days a week in surgery sometimes, and not sleeping and eating all the garbage in the nursing lounge, right? And so that added up to 20 years of damage, which led to me not just being 50 pounds overweight, but also with 3 chronic diseases and an autoimmune disease that required me to be on 10 prescription medications. So 10 years ago, I was like, this is not how I want to live. But in Western medicine, which I'd been deeply trained in, I was a surgeon for, as I said, trained at the Mayo Clinic. I did not have the tools available to me to fix myself. So I went out there and learned the science of functional medicine. I learned the science of just getting my lifestyle right. And back then, I didn't have all the tools that these guys are going to talk about today. And I got myself healthy in 8 months. And I thought to myself that there has to be a better way. And that allowed me to start this clinic called Next Health, where we started practicing. But 10 years ago, I did not have any of the tools that we have today. So if you guys looked at the person next to you on both sides, if half of you in this room are not wearing some sort of wearable and tracking your metrics right now, that would be a surprise to me, honestly. And nowadays we're tracking our heart rate variability, our sleep cycles, and then we get on our phones and we have our blood tests on our phones now. Like 10 years ago, only doctors could get you your blood test. This is gated information. So it's like we're living in this crazy new science fiction reality that has really enabled us to take control of our health. But what's happened also since the pandemic, really, I think, in the last few years, we have a flood of data, and this is creating problems, right? There's health anxiety, there's trust issues, and there's this just big picture concept of like, how do we bring it all together, right? And so we have here a few incredible experts that we're going to talk about this live today and try to break through some of this noise for all of you and really put together a system as a take-home for you that you can implement in your life. And so that is the goal of the panel today. And so let me introduce our amazing panelists that we have. We have here Steve Martocci with SuppCo, an incredible company that is revolutionizing the supplement space. We have Pranitha Patil with a little company called Function Health that you might have heard of or a member of. And lastly, there's this other little company called Whoop, where John Sullivan comes from. And so incredible companies, incredible people here to really break through all this noise. So please give them all a round of applause for joining us today. And so I want to start off this conversation with a little bit about just a changing landscape, right? I think the data used to be, first of all, gatekept by physicians, but also only available to like elite athletes, right? If you're like Lance Armstrong, you had the data all the time. And now we live in a world where everyone has access to the same data that the elite athletes do. It's mind-blowing. And the biohackers were the first people that kind of like were using data, but now we all have access to this. And so I'd like to start off with you, Steve. How did you get here with where you are today with this new company called SuppCo? You're you founded many companies. What made you do this in the supplement space?
Yeah, a little on my history. I was not an elite athlete. I was a terrible athlete. So back in high school, I'm 6'5". I would always make the sports teams because they'd have hope that I'd be amazing. And I was like super overweight, and I wouldn't even lose weight playing an entire season of football, and I wouldn't put on muscle. And I tried to go to doctors back then to check my thyroid. My mom had a thyroid condition. I was at the low end of normal. They did nothing for me. 90s medicine did nothing. I got over 300 pounds at one point, and then sold my first company. Being here at South by reminds me a lot of it, which was called GroupMe. And I was about almost 270 pounds when I did that. And I was like, I need to live. I need to be healthier. And I found a functional medicine doctor, and I started changing my life. And to be honest, back then, I was like pretty ashamed of what I was doing. You know, messing with my hormones, taking different supplements. Like I felt so deficient, and there was no community of people talking about this stuff back then. But it worked, and I really changed my life. I got much healthier, and people would ask me, what was my secret? What was the success? And they never wanted to hear diet and exercise, even though that was obviously a big part of it. And it was 10 years before Ozempic was a thing. So I would share them this ugly, out-of-date spreadsheet of my medications and supplements that I took. And honestly, back then, you give that to someone, they'd have no idea what to do with it, because you kind of bring it to their doctors and they'd be like, I don't know what this is, So, fast forward running software companies over the years, I wanted to build again and wanted to go back to that sharing the supplement stack, because longevity, biohacking is just dinner table conversation now. And it's pretty amazing the transformation that's happened over these years. And so we've built a platform to help people initially share their supplement stacks, but now we've kind of gone after the whole industry to make things better, to help you make sense of it and figure out what to take. And you have an incredible data set on our platform of trust and matching supplements to your health goals. And these tools didn't exist 10 years ago at all.
No, I know. We use SuppCo in our practice actually to help us choose the best supplements for our patients. So it's an incredible tool. So thank you for putting that out there. Pranitha, you also came to this place on this chair here today with your own personal health journey. And I'd love to hear a little bit about that, and also about how does having access to your own blood biomarkers, how does that change the equation? Maybe you could talk about how it did it for you, and then how you brought that out to the world.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I have a very personal story that led me to build Function. We started in 2021, but come back with me to my teens and 20s. I was diagnosed with PCOS, I had high cholesterol, and prediabetes. And some of that was genetic, some of that was just because of my lifestyle. And essentially, I was tossed around the medical system, created my own spreadsheet to track my biomarkers. And what this made me believe is either I was going to die by 40, or I was going to live a pretty unhealthy life with a bunch of medication. We were just talking about this, but I was supposed to be put on a statin when I was 20, and the doctor told me they hadn't done enough research on people my age and women to be able to successfully say you should take this. So that was then, and essentially did what Function does today, which I'll get to in a second. Started to learn, how can I experiment on myself, change my diet, change my lifestyle, and try to figure this out on my own. And fast forward to 2021, when I met my co-founder, where we knew we needed to build in this space where we could understand our biology. We deserve to have this information. So that's exactly what Function is. It's a new health operating system that starts with diagnostic testing, so blood and urine testing, in addition to imaging, MRI and CT scans, to really get a sense of what's going on in your body proactively. We do 160 biomarkers that are looking at your heart, your hormones, your thyroid, your liver. Biology is incredibly complex. The folks in this room probably know that. And so the whole idea was, why are we waiting until after we go to our doctor to get our labs? Today, the traditional physical is 30 biomarkers, and they're only done after you go see your physician. You go in, sit there, and then they say you're going to do your labs afterwards. Why do we do that? We haven't innovated on that visit for so many years. So we wanted to shake that up, and that's why we built Function to be where it was. It's proactive testing longitudinally, and the whole idea is that you get more information about yourself because, one, you deserve to, two, the science and the machines are here, and it should be so easy easy and accessible to happen. So we're 365 a year, and the whole idea is to get this twice a year.
I love how both of you built your own spreadsheets to track your data. I mean, that's amazing. How many people in here are tracking their own biomarkers right now? Gosh, that's crazy, right? Like, this was never even a thing a few years ago. It's just mind-blowing. So, you guys are building the maps for yourself with the data, the supplements to take. And then John, I look at what Whoop is doing as finally enabling us to have like a daily navigation on our wrist, right? Because these allow us to see big picture problems and put into place big picture solutions, but it's really the day-to-day activities that you do that move your health in the right direction. So love to hear a little bit about you and your journey in Whoop and talk about the Daily Navigator on our wrist right now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the compliment we'll be getting at today, and I'm really inspired by your personal stories. I don't have such an inspiring personal story about getting to Whoop. I find the brand and the organization to be really inspiring, but not quite so personal. I arrived at Whoop about 9 years ago, and it's interesting at the time, as you've suggested, like HRV tracking and recovery status was really an exotic domain. It was professional athletes, professional teams, Olympic committees, maybe special forces operators and so forth. And the rest of us were basically counting our steps, right? It was like kind of the best thing that we had is any kind of, directional evaluation of how to grade ourselves and our efforts. But I think what we discovered in the early days of Whoop, in the early days of the consumer product, is that the appetite was 100% there, right? So as soon as the technology trickled down from those exotic environments to being something you could buy online, the adoption was really fervent. And yes, in the early days it was biohackers, and a lot of people who were working out a lot were using it to track their workouts and their strain. But very quickly, it became adopted for, I would say, like an observation of capacity management in general. Mm-hmm. And once capacity management became the key, it was really more even recovery that put us on the map, more so than it was strain. And then from, what is my physical capacity to what is my potential, period. And so that's a lot of what we see today is people living aspirational lives, looking to Whoop to nudge them onto their course and taking in, I would say, even a more diverse, or obviously a much more diverse panel of inputs than ever before. And I was thinking about today, what's interesting about what had been this trickle down is now actually becoming this sort of grassroots push back up, right? So now we can collect all of this data, we can take control of our circumstances, as you said, and now we're going into our doctors and we're asking and expecting more than we were before. So it's interesting how that flipped from the trickle down to this upward pressure from the grassroots.
I actually love it because in my practice, when someone comes in and they have a wearable on and they want to talk to me about their data and they show me their phone, they're like, what happened to my sleep here? And what's my HRV doing here? It's fantastic. Like we finally have this communication module in our phone now enabled by the data that you guys are providing to have really good conversations with patients. So it's been a game changer, and I see it every day. How many of you have a wearable on? All right, what a great crowd, right? Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about what's happened over the last couple of years. I think we have a lot of data, and now there's this question of a lot of data, what do you do with it and who do you trust, right? Trust has become a major factor. It used to be you just trust your primary care doctor. Whatever they say, here's your prescription, you take it. That is completely broken now, right? You guys agree, right? You still see your primary care doctor, but now you have your own data and you're looking to where you take that data and make it into real actionable information, right? And so I'm going to start with you, Steve, on this question of trust. You're kind of like the whistleblower on the stage over here in the supplement industry, and I love what you've done. Talk about trust scores and your product evaluations.
I mean, trust in the supplement space is very, very hard, I would say, right now. You have tons of brands that are trying to get out there and kind of ride the momentum, and you have a lot of voices who are just saying more is the answer. So I think we attack trust on a lot of different levels at SuppCo. The one that people have absolutely fallen in love with is basically our trust scores. We take a 29 attribute system and give every product that we can basically a score out of 10, which is like what certifications, what manufacturing standards, a whole bunch of different aspects of it. We've taken that even further with like a tested program we just launched where we pull products off the shelf anonymously and see if they actually are what they say they're going to be from your perspective as a buyer. A lot of certifications out there are during the manufacturing process and the brand gets to send the sample in and that stuff, but we actually emulate the experience as a shopper. So that's a lot on the trust of the products. And then also we have a scoring system for what you're currently taking It's our stack score, and make sure that what you're taking actually aligns to your goals, that you're getting the best prices for things because it's very easy to overpay for stuff, and that you're hitting the right dosages for you. We've just added biomarker upload too, so you can make sure you're not overdoing it as well, because there's not a lot of brands that are aligned with you, just as excited when you stop taking something that doesn't work as when you try something new. So we want to be with you every step of the way and help you make sense of this thing.
Yeah. We have, once again, all of our patients, we have them put their supplement stack into SuppCo, and we make sure that they have the best quality supplements. And I think, quality is such a key indicator of how much their biomarkers change actually and the quality of the supplements that they're taking. So it's pretty awesome. Who takes supplements in this room? All right, probably almost everybody. Put your supplements in SuppCo. It's super easy to see if they're quality, and if you can actually get cheaper ones for the same quality too. I mean, it's can save you some money there too. So Pranitha, I had a patient the other day come in, and they're like, I was having this like weird heartburn, and I went to my doctor. He gave me like some anti-heartburn medication, Prilosec, and so I just went and got a full body MRI. And so I was like, okay, how'd you do that? Function. And so, I look at like the medical industry right now, and you have so much control in your hands that's provided by companies like Function now that you can not take, let's wait and watch as an answer. And so, Pranitha, I'd love for you to talk about, how you guys are bridging that trust gap in medicine.
Absolutely. So the whole idea, like I said, is we all deserve access to information when we need it. What we're not trying to do is create a bunch of hypochondriacs,
Yeah.
which there are certainly hypochondriacs that love Function, and I'm not. That's amazing. Good job. I'm not trying to create a whole country or globe of hypochondriacs.
Yeah.
The whole idea is how do we get you the right information at the right time, and we don't have a wait and see approach, because that is why 3 out of 4 people in the US have a chronic condition, and that is why so many people in this country die of preventable deaths. That has to be solved now. We are never going back to a place where people are dying preventable deaths. And like, what an incredible moment in time. And the way we see it is when you think about access to the biomarkers, to the scans, to the wearable data, and bringing that all together, we leverage a lot of AI in this, where we're at a place where you can bring all of that information together. And for example, we acquired Ezra, which was the scans company. So that's where you get your MRIs today. And the whole idea was, how do we minimize the amount of time you have to be getting your scan? And how do we minimize the time to return actual results? So a huge thing that our team built was a 22-minute scan for the ability to internalize and actually explain the photos at a faster pace. I'm trying to make that really easy to understand. So that is an incredible sort of achievement in making something faster and, again, more accessible. The other thing we've done that we recently announced is called the Medical Intelligence Lab. When it comes to trust, all of these biomarkers are N of 1. I am so different from everybody in this room, and if you look to your left and right, we are not the same. We should not be using averages of Americans for reference ranges. First of all, that's not going to be the healthiest, and we're going to just miss the mark. We need to fine-tune our health. So when you think of N of 1, when we set out to build Function, worked with clinicians, researchers, scientists, and the most up-to-date research when we think about the content we deliver to our members, as well as which biomarkers to test and why. And so you'll kind of see this evolve if you're a Function member with a product of actually tailoring tests based on what you need. And the whole point is this medical intelligence lab also leverages AI, because a single doctor, and you'll agree with this, doesn't have all the up-to-date information, because they're also seeing patients. So they don't have the time to go research every night. The whole point is, how does AI become a tool for those doctors? So those are the 2 things we're doing today, just in terms of AI and trust, of getting people the right information at the right time.
Yeah. So it's a game changer for patients, I think. And then I think about my patients that are not wearing wearables, right? And so a lot of times someone will come in and I ask them, like, how do you sleep? And they're like, oh, I sleep fine, 7 hours, feel pretty rested. And then I'm like, well, let's put a Whoop band on you for a couple of weeks and let's just see. And then we see how they really sleep, and they're waking up 5, 6 times a night. They are getting like less than 10 minutes of deep sleep. And, I look at like trusting your own physiology or your symptomatology to tell you what's really going on in your body. And sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes like symptoms and how you feel comes later than what your data actually can show you, right? And so I think that the same kind of also applies to like behavior change, right? Like if you're trying to work out more, if you're trying to sleep better and you don't have the data, it's hard to know if you're really moving in the right direction. So is this something you guys think about at Whoop?
All the time. And you hit it exactly on the head. I mean, the Whoop science is rigorous. We have an incredible team. We're always researching and pushing the science. And the data is valuable, but I think where we deliver a lot of value, and it's not just Whoop, but where behavior becomes valuable is in the honesty, in the transparency, and the self-accountability. So just like you said, you get people all the time who are like, oh, I remember when I started at Whoop, one of the lessons I learned is that we are most habituated to being underslept. It's like the thing that we can somehow get the most used to and be habituated to the way that we feel in the morning. And so exactly like you said, you wake up in the morning and you feel relatively fresh. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm great with 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And the reality is just you're not. But what we need to do is we need to present data to people and encourage them to make those changes. And those positive reinforcements often become virtuous feedback cycles. The same goes for alcohol. Whoop hates alcohol, unfortunately for me. I love beer, especially IPAs. Whoop hates alcohol more than anything else. But inevitably, you see, when you eliminate that scotch or that glass of wine or that beer before you go to bed, your resting heart rate comes down, your HRV goes up, your sleep is materially higher quality, your recoveries are better, you're more clear-headed in the morning. And it's like seeing is believing. You got to get people to that point for sure. But as well, I mean, as you can see with Function and with the Whoop Advanced Lab product, my one personal anecdote in this environment is that I'm a fairly fit person. I call my stupid human tricks of endurance once a summer, where I ride my bike for a really long time, and I thought my lifestyle was outrunning my family history. And I took our Advanced Labs product. I showed that I was like 5x the outer bounds for what would be acceptable for ApoB and Lp(a). And that was just the truth of the matter, right? So I was woefully ignorant. I was blissfully ignorant of how my family circumstances may or may not have been contributing to my health. Now I know, and I'm doing something about it. So what you can measure, you can manage. And with the right technology, the right systems in place, we can nudge people onto that more virtuous path and basically hold that mirror up with real honesty to the way they are or aren't delivering on their life's objectives with the choices they make.
So true. I want to give everyone that nugget. You blew past it really quickly, but if you don't have an ApoB and an Lp(a) measured by your doctor, that's a huge problem. You can measure this with Function. Lp(a) is not captured in your normal cholesterol panel. 20% of people have this. It can lead to accelerated cardiovascular risk and plaque formation. So you were sharing that you had that, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I pulled this data last night. Whoop is, even as much as we've evolved over time, it's still a pretty healthy, active population. Yeah. And 2 staggering statistics. So among those who have started to test for their own blood pressure, so that we require a calibration before you use the product, 50% of those who believe that they have average blood pressure are actually hypertensive. Yeah. As well, people who are testing into the Advanced Lab product, between a quarter and a third of them are testing positive for Lp(a) or ApoB. And again, these are relatively healthy people who think that their lifestyle is outrunning hereditary, but it's not. And then the same goes for prediabetes and insulin intolerance. So just even among healthy populations, just a wild amount of discovery about oneself.
Yeah. This just reinforces what I said earlier. It's like you might feel good, but there's much more going on in your biology that you don't know unless you have the numbers, right? So, we talked prior to this panel, and we were wanting to bring this all together for you guys. And so we have this kind of loop of one diagram on this slide here, right? And so we talk about the clinic, which is basically, what Next Health does. Hopefully we're bringing all of this together for you and giving you medical advice in a much more proactive and functional way than traditional Western medicine. And then you have this map that you can use, which is developed by having access to your own blood tests through companies like Function, And then the fuel, which is supplements, is part of that, right? Obviously, it's your diet, how you exercise, how you sleep, and taking supplements and having trust in supplements. And finally, the coach, which is Whoop. This is your day-to-day kind of feedback loop. And I think if you bring these four together into your healthcare journey and separate this from your disease care journey, right? That's your insurance and your prescription medications and all of that. This can be massively transformative. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but for the first time in history right now, we're actually seeing less chronic disease year over year than we have in the past. You know, we had a steady march upwards as far as what percent of the population had chronic disease, and now this is actually reversing. And I think a big piece of that story is this loop that most people are kind of like trying to put together for themselves. And I want to ask you, Pranitha, with this map, how do you think about function health replacing the traditional kind of panels that doctors do that are more of the like the disease care model? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So the whole point is to be as comprehensive and longitudinal with the data that we collect. Like I said, a traditional annual physical is 30 biomarkers. The whole point is before you even need to see a physician, are you able to get a pulse of how your body is changing? Sometimes you go to a doctor, again, for your annual physical, and they say, come back in 2 to 3 years. You're all good. 2 to 3 years. That's crazy. So much happens to your body in 2 to 3 years. The whole point of having a map and understanding what to do is to be more informed before you go see your doctor, if you need to see your doctor. There are many of our patients or members who use function and actually can manage some of what they're dealing with at home. And then there are a subset of people who do have to go speak with a physician. The whole point is your physician's actually no longer your first opinion. You're going to use AI probably to ask, hey, I have a headache, what's going on? So that's, I'm not saying that's your first doctor opinion, but you're getting an opinion from AI. And then you're saying, hey, here's all my biomarkers, and here's what these biomarkers are telling me about myself. Here's what's out of range. So you have more of an understanding, you're more empowered, and you can then ask very relevant, poignant questions to a physician when you do go to a clinic or see a specialist. You know what to ask, you know what you're looking for, and that is, I think, how care should be done outside of the disease state care that we have, is we have a map. We have the access to this information to be able to know what's going on with our bodies.
That's so fantastic. And so now you have a map, and who's taking a function test in this room? Okay, great. So you guys know, right? You get your biomarkers back, and then it gives you suggestions. And some of the suggestions are sometimes supplements, right? So for example, if your hemoglobin A1C is high, it might recommend berberine, for example. But then it's like, okay, what berberine do I buy, right? And so even as a doctor, like I want to have confidence that if I'm prescribing a supplement like vitamin D3K2, berberine, ashwagandha, whatever have you, I want to know that what I'm telling you to take is actually going to work. So how does SuppCo address that issue?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the trust score has been like kind of really becoming an industry standard for identifying which are the best products to take. And then what's also interesting is when you put them in your stack, you can see like, you know, you might be recommended vitamin D, but vitamin D keeps showing up in like lots of different products, right? And so like your vitamin D amount that you're actually taking might not be the, 5,000 IUs that you thought you were taking, but several thousand more coming from other places. So the ability to have your whole kind of nutrient snapshot in addition to the kind of product level trust scores, finally gives you a way, like how many times you go to a doctor and they're like, list your supplements. And you're like, fish oil, magnesium. They have no idea how much you're actually taking. They have no idea if it's coming from a quality source. They have no idea how to give you feedback on it. So like, we're really filling that gap. And it's been nice to see brands reformulate their products as we bring these things up. We've had, something like titanium dioxide removed from multiple brands once it shows up as an inactive ingredient that isn't safe. So we're kind of playing this trust layer where we don't want necessarily regulation everywhere, but we want consumers to be aware of what they're putting in their bodies. So highly recommend you bring your stack to your doctor when you go and see them, so they actually know what you're putting in your body. And when they recommend something, look up the products that you should take, because they may also be recommending things that they profit from. And so getting a neutral, party to review that can be really beneficial.
And then John, for you, how are we closing this loop by taking the data and actually implementing behavior change and kind of bringing the data together with your daily markers as well?
Yeah, Pranitha used the term longitudinal, and I think that's exactly, you hit the nail right on the head. So, you get tested. This used to, again, be the domain of the exotic in the terms of frequency that we can do it with now, but you get tested, you implement an intervention or a modulation of some kind, and then Whoop can tell you the extent to which it's working and how it's making you feel, or at least interpreting how you might be feeling. So if you test low for iron and you begin supplementing and you see that your oxygenation goes up and you sleep better and your recovery starts to improve, we're putting some wood behind the arrow of like the extent to which all of that is working for you. And I think that education is really important. I really enjoy educating myself, but I think ultimately the proof positive of how it's impacting your quality of life is what enables you to make lasting change. We talk a lot about behavior change at Whoop. And now, whether it's through function or through through other sources, we're just ingesting all of this additional data, and there's more insight in it than there ever was before. It's more timely, as you were talking about before, and it's more personal, as you've said over and over again, right? And so all of those things just make it that much more relevant. So people are seeing these transformational stories, they're understanding it, they're educating themselves. And what we end up seeing in our members over and over again is that they just keep getting these slight nudges. Sometimes it's sometimes they learn something really important. We get these testimonials all the time about just this discovery, this intervention that changed everything, that saved someone's life. But more common are the thousands of stories of people who just make those 1% changes. And I used to listen to one of our ambassadors is Michael Phelps, and he talks about 1% improvements, and it never resonated for me. I'm like, Michael, I have 90% improvement in front of me. I got way more opportunity than 1% in the next year. Then I realized it's not about that. It's about stacking up all of these little decisions and experiencing the virtuous feedback cycle of positive reinforcement and behavior change. And yeah, now you can do that episodically, you can do that longitudinally. It's kind of a choose your own adventure for how excited you want to get about it.
Yeah, so 1% improvement every day adds up to a 3,500% improvement over the course of the year or something like that. Anyone read Atomic Habits? It's like one of his famous sayings in there. Okay, so awesome stuff we have available to us now. All of this used to cost, I would say, $10,000, $15,000 to do if you were going to do all of this 10 years ago, right? And now we're at a place where almost this entire room has gotten biomarkers done, is wearing some sort of wearable device. And I think about how do we keep pushing this out there, right? Because if we're really going to move the needle and stop chronic disease in its tracks, everyone needs to be able to have access to this. So there's education, and there's also bringing the price down, right? And so at Next Health, one of the things that we do is we offer a membership model that someone can come and sit down with a medical practitioner once a quarter and use all of our facilities and get their blood test done quarterly. And they can do all of this within what their HSA plan covers, so at less than $2,000 a year. So that's how we're contributing to the democratization of this and trying to push this forward. Now, we decided we're not going to wait for health insurance to cover us because that's just never going to happen, right? And so I'm wondering, at Whoop, how are you thinking about democratization and getting this out there to even more people?
Yeah, so Whoop is also a membership model, and depending on what you opt into, it ends up being something on the order of a fraction of $1 a day. I was telling this story earlier that I live in Boston, and Boston considers itself, among other things, to be the medical capital of the planet. And I couldn't get a PCP, and so then I had to resort to concierge medicine, and that ended up costing $5,000 a year or whatever it was. And ultimately, I've now just hired somebody to resource all of the things that I've heard you guys talk about all day long, right? So it is amazing that this technology has trickled down. And the other thing I'll reflect on is that as the technologies trickle down and become more available to all of us, what's really inspiring is the amount of conversation that it's instigated, right? So you get people talking about their recovery at breakfast or their sleep at work or their whatever at their run club. And it's created, it's been, I mentioned this before, that upward pressure on the system. Like everybody's hungry for more knowledge and more credibility and more inspiration in the space. And I think that is another really important part of the democratization, right? Like the fact that we're here, I mean, granted, I'm in my own algorithm, but like my experience at South by is that health tech is kind of like taken. It's like the Tesla robots, and then health tech is like the whole story of South by for me right now. Again, just my own algorithm, but I think it's because of the awakening of consciousness around what we can all do with ourselves and for ourselves. And so I think transferring our science into culture is also a really important part of the equation.
Yeah, it's true, and I think also having that sense that you can have all of your data and take your health under your control, but it is going to require some investment of time and some investment of money at this point. But I think that needs to be a mindset shift because we're so used to just outsourcing our health to our insurance company. And that's more expensive if you think about it in the long run. Like the more we do that, the more our health insurance costs go up. And we see that like our employees had a 15% price hike in their insurance costs last year. It's crazy. And so the only way we're going to fix this is to go more in this direction of this loop. Pranitha, there's no other company that I've heard of in my entire life than Function Health as far as democratizing access to your data. I mean, it's incredible. How do you guys do this for $369 a year?
365.
365.
$1 a day. We just reduced the price from $4.99, and our goal from the beginning is how do we make this accessible for everybody. When we started, we learned that the only way to get this was $30,000 concierge visits, and I was not going to be able to afford that. And so for us, it's always been how do we get this to be as low a price as possible. 365 is still not accessible to everybody, but I say this often is health is literally the most important kind of ROI you can have on spend. If you spend on your health, you are spending at the gym for function, your Whoop, your supplements, like that is the best thing you can spend on because you are ideally optimizing and understanding what you're doing about it and then living hopefully a graceful long life. And for us, that's the most important is how do we get this to be as accessible as possible? It even goes to our scans is how do we reduce the time so that then we can make it more affordable? So that's kind of the work of us. Like hopefully you're entrusting Function to do the work for you as a member to get this to be as accessible as possible. It goes for our add-ons. It goes for anything we add in the future. Our whole philosophy is 8 billion people. And I don't mean to be cheesy when I say this, but like for the founders, this is our love letter to humanity. We are truly trying to create a category defining moment with Function. And it's an honor to be building this company because we're never going back to a world where we don't have access to this information. And to say that so confidently is incredible. We're never going back. Like let that sink in. How cool of a time do we live in where we will always have this access and we can do something about it.
I'll say another quick thing. I want to highlight something you said is an MRI of the whole body used to take, you wouldn't even do it because it would take hours and hours to do this. But remember, the MRI machine is just a piece of hardware. And the data that it collects, you can put it through software to give you the actual results, right? And so what Pranitha's company is doing is developing the software for those MRI scanners to scan your whole body in how many minutes?
22
minutes. It's a game changer. I've been in medicine for 30 years. I mean, you can't get anything done in 22 minutes, and so this is a game changer. And MRI time is what people pay for, right? It's the amount of time you're in the MRI machine. So to get out of that machine in 22 minutes just allows its cost to be just so much cheaper. And that's how you guys are just, like you said, we're never going back. Once the software is developed for a 22-minute MRI, it's there. It's out in the wild. It gives me chills sometimes just thinking about this time that we're in right now. Steve, I'm always like, I just don't understand like apps and everything. Like I just don't, how do you do this for free? Like SuppCo is free. You can upload your supplements tomorrow for free, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm always searching for like the right intersection. Well, particularly in SuppCo, searching for the right intersection of health and capitalism. For us, there's just so many business models that the answer is just more and people profiting way too much on people's health. I think everyone on the stage is trying to find that intersection in the right way as well. Look, that the power of SuppCo. I mean, we have a paid membership for premium features, and the brands have started paying us in the tested program for the certification. And so we are going to continue to look for the opportunities to get this as wide as possible because the consumer education is just so important. You have 70% of Americans buying supplements, 50+% of them taking them regularly. Like, this is a giant market. Like, I don't need much revenue from the whole country, the whole world, to build something that's a great business. And so we're just very driven to be something different here, to be something that the answer is not just more. We're not profiting from your incremental sales. We don't even have affiliate revenue on clicks out to Amazon and stuff right now, or any of the sites. So we're continuing to do that, and we think there's real opportunities to stay aligned with you and find you ways to save money as you're building out these supplement stacks. And I think it's just going to be a really harmonious relationship, and that winning on trust and winning on that alignment of health and capitalism, I think is an extremely powerful long-term advantage for us against anyone else who's just gouging you along the way. So we're excited to keep developing the model to get this to scale.
Yeah, and also you can get. I'll mention it again. Like, you can figure out what supplements you're taking, how good they are, and also is there a lower cost version that you might want to consider to save you some money. So in reality, you're like charging negative for your software. People saving money in the long run, right?
I mean, the average person kind of comes in and then once they have their stack in the platform, 2 to 3 products get changed. And those are like potentially lifelong decisions, right? Like, you should be taking these products for decades in many cases. And unfortunately, the pricing on supplements is really optimized. They spend a lot of money to acquire a customer, and then people tend to fall off. And you end up paying that same price that they spent all this customer acquisition on for decades. That doesn't feel right. There are better models to do here, and you're going to see a lot of innovation from us, throughout our history on getting you aligned to the stack that's right for you, that you can take for life.
Awesome. So we have 15 minutes left, and I would love to ask you all a hard question. Okay, it's going to get harder now. The previous questions were softballs. Steve, how do you think about the FDA and what the FDA's role is in the supplement industry? And would you change anything there?
Well, it's a great question. The thing that's different in supplements versus medications is, I forget the exact FDA part, but it's like you're self-reporting that you're doing your certifications and your CGMP and all that stuff. And, they can come after you for making changes, but they rarely do unless there's consumer complaints. So I actually think for us, we're just filling the gap, right? We're doing a lot of consumer education, a lot of consumer protection. We pulled the top creatine gummies off Amazon. I think it just did our own independent testing on them. 4 out of 6 of them had 0 or just trace amounts of creatine in them at all. Like total crap. And so the ability to kind of provide the freedom of us to have the society we do in America, but then provide that consumer protection layer where things might fall short has been a wonderful window for us. And like, it's so great. The brands have really fallen in love. The brands that are doing great, real work here to protect you are integrating our widgets of their trust score onto their pages. They're on your Vitaboom pages. Yeah. Like, we're kind of being embraced as this layer to fill the gap where the FDA is. I think the FDA is stepping in to do more interesting protection around things like peptides, and pharmaceutical industry and things like that. And we're just going to keep filling the role for consumer protection right now. And it's been kind of an honor to see us kind of lead the charge in this. And so I think where they leave us freedom, we are going to fill it in and be the ally of the consumer.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask the audience a tough question, if you want to admit this or not. Who here has gotten an annual physical in the last 365 days? All right, a pretty good number there. All right. I honestly would have expected less people, but my question centers around this for you. Do you think the annual physical is even going to be a thing in 2030?
It won't be as it is today. I would say it won't be annual. It will be based on when you need. And the sort of information at hand will be on a more daily cadence. We'll have a better pulse of what's going on with our bodies at a regular cadence as much as we want. And it also won't be just a physical, right? It'll be everything, your mental state, all of it, all in one. And I do think you'll still go to a physician, but you'll go to a physician based on need for a specialist, likely a specialist visit. And it won't be, it'll just be because of what you need, and you'll be far more informed. So annual physical redefined probably, and probably not just 2030, in like a handful of years here that we're coming up on changing the game of how these are done. And I also think the really beautiful thing is our physicians who are just catching up to this and understanding, hey, I really do need to use AI. Hey, I really do need to be able to interpret XYZ that a patient's coming in to the office and asking me about. I do think that there are physicians that are leveling up in terms of where the industry is going. Healthcare, as you all probably know, is often 10 years behind everyone else. But we're finally at the place where I think we're catching up to speed.
Yeah. You asked me, like, how often do I see my patients? And I see my patients like every 6 weeks to 3 months, really. Like, we love being across from each other and talking through their metrics and their numbers, their WHOOP data, their function data. And then also we're constantly adjusting their supplement stack based on what the data is showing us as well. And so I look at us as doctors really redefining our role as more of a coach, a medically informed coach that can really help point you in the right direction. And I think as I look at the role of a physician changing, because hopefully there will be less chronic disease and we don't have to take care of so many people for bad problems, we have the opportunity to really get back to what we love to do as doctors, which is talk to patients, right? And so I think it's an incredible world that we're living in right now. I have a tough one for you. I deal with this every day in my practice. Health data anxiety, right? And so I have people that will not wear a wearable no matter what because they're just scared to see what it's going to tell them. Sometimes I can get them to like move into the wearable space by saying, like, you don't look at the data, let me look at it for you. Just wear the band for a couple of weeks. How do you talk to people about health anxiety, and where does WHOOP come in to solve that problem?
I'm lucky that, given the difficulty of the question, it was the most popular question I was asked over the course of the last 5 days I spent in Austin. I can understand the anxiety that comes with looking at red recovery in the morning and not knowing what to do about it as an evaluation, a judgment, a report card, a referendum on bad decisions that you woke up with. I know that feeling. What I would recommend for anyone who experiences it as judgment is to start with a reframing, which is to say that it's not a judgment, it's data. It's input to help you make different decisions, potentially, over the course of the day, if that, in fact, is you want a different outcome than the one that you just woke up with. And I think that if you can reframe it and then adapt to it, the learnings can become positively reinforcing. And then feeling in control is empowering, and that turns the negative into a positive. So for some people, it does take work. Not everybody works up and has that like growth mentality. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. It's like the most important lesson I took out of my kids' education as an old man is learning what a growth mentality is, a growth mindset is. But it really is. So instead of looking at it as a referendum, look at it as an aid, as an input, and try to take control of your circumstances and your fate with that aid.
Yeah. Once again, it's perception change, right? For sure. Yeah. All right. Fun part of the whole panel now. Let's all go through and just like, regardless of cost, what is the one thing that you think moves the needle most for people? All right. And this can be from your personal experience. It can be from all the data that you're collecting. For me, my personal experience is the one thing, after talking to thousands of patients we have 15 locations with thousands and thousands of members, and I talk to so many of these patients, I think the one thing that moves the needle the most for people is when I talk to them about a morning routine. Because like we said earlier, a 1% change adds up every day to 3,500% change over the year. And if I can get them into a morning routine that has some level of movement, some level of mindset around it, and also something having to do with spirituality, whether it be journaling, a little moment of meditation, and then movement. Just even a 10-minute workout every single day can move the needle massively for your health. And I'm a huge believer in getting into it. It doesn't have to be a morning routine. Morning is the best time though. You have the most energy. No one is like, putting you into decision fatigue, and you're going to likely get it done. I can say, 30 to 40 minutes every morning is going to move the needle for almost everybody. So Steve, what's your one tip?
I've got three. I'll go quick.
Oh, okay, great.
One, I have to pay a personal trainer to work out. I do not have enough self-motivation to get up and lift weights, and I think that strength is an essential part of our routines, and whatever that's my budget, I have to do it, and it's just not a choice. So I think strength training is one of those things. If you can self-motivate, great. If you can't, it's probably the best investment you can make, even though it's expensive. The second is a calcium scan of your heart, particularly for mine, it was a Clearly test. I super paranoid, did one when I was 30, no plaque. But by 35, I had signs of heart plaque, and by 40, it was even accelerating. So I've been on statins quite early, and I monitor my heart plaque a lot. If I hadn't gotten ahead of that, my 50s could have been quite rough when it comes to my heart. And the cheapest one I have, I actually brought it with me because we panel prepped for this one, is flossing is one of those things that's super hard to do, and I can't use floss picks, but there's this little Y-shaped double strand of floss thing called, what's it called here? T-Smile, Evolutionary Clean Dental Flosser. It's $18 for a ton of them on Amazon, and I swear this gets me to floss. It works really great, and your dentist noticed right away. So
I love it. And I will say that your oral health is actually related to your risk of Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, and even cancer, they're finding now, because you're saving lives every day with your floss sticks and your SuppCo app. Pranitha, what's yours?
So I have two, not just one. One is sleep. I've got a 10-month-old at home, so what is sleep? But I would say if and when you need to, if budget unlimited, whatever it takes to figure out your sleep situation is super important. Even if that means you take a 20-minute nap in the middle of the day, amazing. I sometimes have to block my calendar just to do that if I didn't get good sleep. So investing in sleep. And then the second one is the sun. So yes, seeing the sun, but also vitamin D, because those two, seeing the sun in the morning, getting outside, taking calls on a walk, whatever it is that gets you to go outside and walk and see the sun. And then because we're not nude seeing the sun, I know that vitamin D is important. So vitamin D.
Yep.
Well, shoot. So I'm not. If no one's going to follow the rules, I'm going to go with more one too.
Okay, great.
First things first. This has been a new one for me. Is a blood pressure check. You don't even need to buy the cuff, right? You can go into a CVS and stick your arm in the thing. I've just been stunned by how many people have hypertension, and then having done some reading around it, I'm stunned at just how insidious it can be over time, especially if you have a family history of high cholesterol, combine it with Lp(a) and some inflammation, and you could really have a problem on your hands. So, and it's also just a very take responsibility thing, right? It's a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's do things like that, and you'll build a pattern of intervening and taking care of yourself. On a more personal front, I find that breath work is incredibly helpful. Our performance scientists have convinced me that it's one of the best ways of tapping into your autonomic nerve response. I've read a little bit on how when we sit at our computers all day, everybody knows about sleep apnea, but you can actually have a form of waking apnea where your breath gets very shallow and you get tight. So breath work is just a way of snapping you out of your head and interrupting your autonomic nervous response, lowering your stress level over the course of the day, and best case, winding yourself down for a good night's sleep.
Awesome stuff. So, when you said hypertension or high blood pressure, I want to encourage all of you guys to buy a blood pressure cuff and check your own blood pressure at home. Find a YouTube video that shows you how to do it correctly, because in medicine we call hypertension or high blood pressure the silent killer. And we know that for every 10 points that you're above 130/80, that you add 15% to your all-cause mortality. And I think this whole panel was a lot about these silent killers, right? There's so many of these things that are happening, and they stack up over decades and decades to add up to then what we now term chronic disease. And unfortunately, we still live in a world where we're so surprised by heart attacks 50% of heart attacks are fatal. And 50% of those people don't even know they have heart disease until they have their heart attack. It's ridiculous. Things like sleep apnea that lead to Alzheimer's disease. Why are so many people getting Alzheimer's? Well, it's because they have undetected high blood pressure. They have undetected metabolic disease. They have undetected, so many undetected things, right? And so we have the ability now to detect and solve for these much, much earlier. And, I just want the entire audience in this last few minutes just to really think about, this loop and how you can bring this into your life and get into the habit of looking at your habits, get into the habit of looking at your data and taking personal responsibility and having these mindset shifts around your health, because now's the time. And it's really about adding health span to your years now, right? We're not talking about longevity. I'm not trying to get you to live to be 150, but I do want you to live as long as you can live, as healthy as possible, so that you're enjoying your life up until the very last moment. That's the goal for all of my patients. So that's my big takeaway here, and I'd love to just kind of go through our esteemed panelists and get your takeaway. Yeah. Oh, you have audience questions. All right. So before we go takeaways, let's do some audience questions. There we go. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for such a great panel with so many practical ideas. I'd love to hear from each of you about a topic of yesterday's panel, which is how accurate do you think AI health advice is? And then I'd love to hear from Steve, as a big gummy fan, are there any gummy supplements that actually have the product in it, or is that just a sort of scam for all of us? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Quickly on the gummies, there are good gummies out there. There are good creatine gummies out there. But do your research. Come check them out on SuppCo, because it is all over the place. AI health, I think it's a wonderful one. I think this is a frontier that all of us on this stage are so excited about, because it's just revolutionizing the kind of patient-doctor pipeline and letting you go so informed to your doctor. We have a SuppIQ system, which is our kind of version of an AI chatbot interaction, and we try to provide tons of guardrails towards what kind of answers we're giving on that. So we're pretty confident in what's coming on our platform, but I'll let everyone else speak to theirs.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for us, it's all about what the AI actually knows about you. So the way we're building function is it knows way more with your biomarker results to actually be able to give you an understanding of why is this headache going on or whatever is happening. So I think that's the biggest thing, is there's going to be a wave of the AI being smarter and actually getting a sense of what's going on with your body that then can do better, I think, when it comes to medical advice. Today, OpenAI or your Claude doesn't know everything about you, and so I would just take it with a grain of salt.
John?
Granted, I'm a marketing guy, so this comes with that disclosure. But the way that I understand we apply it in the development at Whoop is what I say to my kids: trust but verify. So as it relates to the advanced labs work, AI is the initiator of the insight. All of the reports are read by clinicians and signed off by nurse practitioners or physician's assistant, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, and I'll just say we're building an AI dashboard for all of our patients right now, live as well. We always have a physician in the loop, so the advice and the typing out of everything is done by AI with a physician looking at it before it's presented to the patient. I don't necessarily think that you need that for every piece of advice, because I think the AI, just throwing out numbers, is 98% correct a lot of the times. And so, unless you're going to get a pharmaceutical medication into your intervention stack and it doesn't know anything about you, it doesn't know your particular risk factors, that's the only time where it's a real red flag. But otherwise, I think it's getting better and better. Yep. We have time for one more question, you think? Do we have time for one more? Yeah, one more? Okay.
Cool. Hey, everybody. And first off, I love the collection for the panel, just like the three different expertise. It's great. So I've got a kiddo. He's 6 years old. He was born with a congenital heart defect. Before you ask, he's doing great, but he's had 2 open heart procedures in his life already. My question is for wearables for kids under the ages of 13. I know it might not be the easiest demographic to shoot for, but any insight into any innovation going on there? And I will say that when you do have a kid with a congenital heart defect, you are in constant communications with your doctor. So I feel pretty covered, but I am, just for some peace of mind, it would be kind of cool to have some sort of wearable for him at this stage of his life. Thanks.
Yeah, as you implied, Whoop is validated down to I think 13 years old, and I don't know of any specific plans to go below that. Darshan, I wonder if you know of any. I'm only familiar with us, but I wonder if you know of any uses out there.
I think there are pediatric specific wearables that are being developed right now, actually, and so I know that the pediatric physician community is really heavily investing into research on pediatric specific wearables as well.
And I should have said,
Coming.
I'm glad your son's doing well.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really excited for the future of medicine to see what they've been able to do in the heart lab over the last 20 years. It's just truly incredible. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. We're over time, so I'd love to get a quick takeaway from each one of you, and then we'll say goodbye to our amazing audience here.
Yeah, I'm just happy that just see the interest in the panel, and I think consumer health and AI is going to be one of the best. Consumer health is going to be one of the best outcomes that comes from AI in this generation going forward. So I think we're still in some early stages of some pretty amazing change that's going to come. So excited to be at the frontier doing our part.
Yeah, plus one to that, I think the fact that this many people are interested, this much health tech is happening at South by, like the movement is here and it's here to stay. So we're just getting started, is what we say at Function, and it's just so cool to think about what could, like the vision of what's coming.
It feels like the golden age, but maybe we're just at the beginning of it. With all of the reflections on the dystopian outcomes of AI and job loss and a lot of things that are real, this is a really inspiring place to be around the applications of what's possible.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.